The Grand Hall of Accord was a marvel of glass and alien steel, its ceilings so high they vanished into blue-lit mist, its curved walls humming with faint pulses of translation energy. It smelled faintly of antiseptic, ozone, and arrogance. A place built not for peace, but for performances of it. Ambassador Lara Wren of Earth entered precisely on time. Not early. Humans knew how that unsettled the Dravari, who prized ceremonial timing, but not a second late, either. She walked slowly, deliberately, heels clicking on polished stone, carrying a small wooden box and a silver thermos. She smiled as though she'd just remembered a pleasant joke, the kind you don't share with strangers. A hush spread over the assembled delegates, representatives from 12 species, each encased in silk, armor, or biochitin. Some stood taller than her by meters. Some slithered. One glowed. But Lara stood alone in the center of the hall, as if gravity itself bent in her favor. She bowed shallowly to the dais, where General Krav Tharn of the Dravari Empire reclined. He was half machine, half flesh, an enormous creature with 4 arms, plated skin, and a face that looked carved out of volcanic rock. One cybernetic eye clicked as it focused on her. Ambassador Wren, the general rumbled, voice like a landslide. You bring tea and toys? Lara smiled wider. Only the finest traditions from our savage little planet, General. Jasmine dragon pearls. She unscrewed her thermos cap. A wisp of steam floated into the air, fragrant and oddly comforting. A curious choice, said Emperor Zokar from his throne, voice slow and melodic, like melting glass. We expected policy. Oh, this is policy, Lara replied sweetly. She knelt, placed a small wooden box gently on the floor, and opened it. Inside were 6 hand-carved ceramic cups, each unique, each glazed with a different earthy hue. On Earth, we begin difficult conversations with warm drink. To remember we are not so different. All of us bleed. All of us burn our tongues when impatient. She poured the tea. The silence that followed was not quite discomfort. The aliens were too proud for that. But there was curiosity. The Murakan delegate, a sentient fungus with a fondness for fermentation, leaned in to sniff. The Skoran carnivorous spiderkin clicked their mandibles once in approval. General Tharn threw back his head and laughed. A terrible sound, too loud for the room. Humans. Always the same. Dress up your fangs in lace and honey. But we know what's underneath. Lara's expression didn't flicker. I assure you, General, if humanity had fangs, you'd have seen them by now. That made the room quiet again. Not with tension, exactly. But the air thickened. Even the Emperor's third eye blinked. The tea was passed. Carefully, even suspiciously. Only a few sipped. The others held their cups like weapons. Lara sat on the edge of her own chair, straight-backed. Her hands folded neatly. We appreciate the opportunity to finalize terms of this treaty. Our people wish to turn the page. Turn it and bury it, the Emperor said, gesturing with a fan of shifting holograms. The war is over. We triumphed. The scars must be sealed. Lara tilted her head. That's precisely the issue. Some of our scars remain open. The general's mouth twitched. You refer to the captured human soldiers, rebels, saboteurs, prisoners of war, Lara corrected gently. He gave another sharp laugh. You mean the ones who screamed? Loud little things. So dramatic. A few delegates shifted in their seats. Even among conquerors, there were lines blurred but present. Lara didn't blink. So you admit they were executed? General Tharn sneered. Executed, dissected. You call it science when you do it. Do not pretend outrage. Lara took a long sip of tea, then placed her cup down, perfectly centered on the armrest. I'm not pretending. There it was, subtle as a knife in silk, the shift. The smile remained, but the weight of her words landed like gravity boots. Behind her, a human aide adjusted a datapad. A minor motion, but timed precisely. The Emperor raised his translucent brows. We have addressed this in internal proceedings. You have our condolences, of course. How curious, Lara said, folding one leg over the other. We never received an official casualty list. Or even a name. The emperor waved a hand. Bureaucracy. Genocide often hides in paperwork, she murmured. The temperature in the hall changed. It wasn't literal. The air still hummed, climate-controlled and perfect. But something primal in every being present began to stir. Recognition, perhaps. Or warning. The Dravari envoy leaned forward, claws tapping the glass of his console. Are you accusing the Empire of war crimes, Ambassador? Of course not, Lara said, rising smoothly. I am confirming them. General Tharn stood. Careful little mammal. She looked up at him. There was no fear in her eyes. Only silence, still as the void between stars. I am being careful, General. Very careful. A beat. Then she opened the side pocket of her sleek uniform jacket and pulled out a small black cube. She placed it on the table and tapped its top. A dozen voices filled the room. Human voices. Ragged. Choked. They came from inside the cube. If anyone hears this, they're experimenting. Tell my daughter. We trusted them. Lara pressed the cube again. Silence returned like a curtain falling. I was told, she said softly, that these recordings were fabricated, a ploy by our enemies. But we've decrypted the metadata, the time codes, the audio signatures. It is all very real. The Emperor's expression remained unreadable. This is most unfortunate. Indeed, she said, and it raises a concern. Which is? General Tharn asked, voice taut. That you've mistaken us, she said. Another pause. The Scoran hissed. The Moroccan delegate began to slowly retract into its breathing pod. Lara took a step forward, not threatening, merely present. You look at humans and see chatter, smiles, tea, songs. You believe that means we are soft. Her voice was velvet. But you forget. Humans only invented diplomacy after millennia of killing each other for sport. We wear kindness like armor, because we know what lives underneath. You speak of revenge, the Emperor asked. No, Lara said. I speak of balance. At that moment, the hall's ceiling dimmed. It wasn't part of the design. Emergency protocols had not triggered, and yet the star's cape projected above them began to shift. Lines of light appeared, dots connecting, a network forming. The Empire's outer colonies, their border stations, their long-range communication beacons, and then red flares. One by one, system after system. Silent, elegant, final. The delegates stared. Some gasped. Some whispered. Lara watched it happen as though she'd seen it already. Because she had. Consider this a response, she said. General Tharn's fists clenched. You attacked us? No, she said. You attacked us. We simply responded on a delay. The Emperor stood now, regal despite the trembling edge to his voice. This will mean war. There already was war, Lara said. We merely weren't allowed to finish it. He glared. The accord was built on a lie, she said. You killed our prisoners of war. Silence. Now, she continued, turning to the room at large, humanity offers a new proposition. One not of conquest, not of retaliation, but of certainty. What certainty? Whispered the Moroccan. She smiled again, small and tired. That you will never do this again. The red stars above continued blinking out, system by system. General Tharn snarled. We will retaliate. No, Lara said, cutting him off. You'll listen, or you'll vanish. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. She walked slowly back to her seat, sat down, and lifted her cup again. The tea is still warm, she said, and you still have a choice. The starscape flickered one last time. A quiet chime rang through the hall, signaling the end of the session. Nobody moved. Lara took another sip and smiled. The war, it seemed, had never truly ended. And now neither had the story. The war room was not on Earth. It wasn't on any charted map, either. Hidden in the shadows of a dying dwarf star, surrounded by a debris field thick enough to swallow light, the station known only as Chamber 12 pulsed to life. Inside, no alarms blared. No red lights flashed. That wasn't the human way anymore. Everything was quiet. Smooth. Calculated. Lara Wren's voice came through the main comms line, her tone unhurried. Proceed to Phase 2. Limit collateral. Prioritize psychological targets. The room responded without hesitation. Dozens of specialists in crisp gray uniforms, some military, some civilian, moved like dancers through precise, pre-rehearsed motions. A long-range drone swarm launched from within a shattered mining rig. Buried code activated in trade stations posing as embassies. 100 invisible knives left their sheaths all at once. And at the center of it, Lara stood in a soundproof chamber, hands clasped behind her back. Behind her, General Desmond Cale leaned against the reinforced window, chewing on the end of a stylus. His jacket was unzipped, his hair a deliberate mess. He looked like someone who'd wandered into the room by accident. "You really hit him hard back there," Cale said. "Didn't even raise your voice." "Cold stuff." "I don't enjoy it," Lara replied without turning. "But it was necessary." He snorted. "They tortured our people. I enjoy their discomfort." She glanced over her shoulder. "That's the difference between you and me. You're waiting to punch them. I'm waiting for them to realize they already lost." He grinned and bit off the tip of the stylus. "Still my favorite diplomat." She turned back to the display as the red markers continued to bloom across the galactic map. Status report. Cloaked assets are online. Satellite intercepts complete. Dravari long-range communication has been fully rerouted through our proxies. Their top 5 admirals are on emergency rotation to places we've already sabotaged. Morale among their border colonies? Spiraling. Lara nodded. Leak the prisoner files. Cale raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? It'll be war." It already was. We're just making it remembered. Half a galaxy away, on the core world of Dravar Prime, panic seeped beneath marble floors and platinum walls. Envoy Greel was sweating. Not that his species technically sweat, but his skin was turning a sickly translucent shade that mirrored human panic responses. He hunched over his console in the diplomatic archives, eyes darting between screens as if the sheer speed of his gaze could stop what was happening. Across the monitors, the prisoner files unfolded. Audio logs, visual clips, medical scans, names, faces. The truth laid bare. They were real. All of them. The missing humans. Labeled as detainees in official reports. Transferred to black sites. Never seen again. The language was clean, clinical, efficient. The way the Empire always operated when doing things it didn't want remembered. Greel staggered back from the screen and slapped the comm switch. Open line to the Emperor. Priority red. Aye. The console hissed. Access denied. He tried again. Same result. A third time. The screen blinked once, then displayed a single line of text. Return of the debt. Timestamp. Now. Greel dropped the headset. In the Grand Hall of Accord, the delegation chamber had been repurposed into an emergency command center. The Emperor stood motionless before the central projection array. General Croft Tharn was pacing, the tips of his boots scarring the polished floor. His cybernetic eye flickered. Unstable. Glitching. "What is she doing?" the general barked. "This isn't war. It's poison. Sabotage. Cowardice." Zokar did not reply. His 3 eyes watched the display with quiet, sinking gravity. Colony after colony going dark. Outposts paralyzed. Intelligence webs unraveling like loose thread. Their ships weren't destroyed. They were cut off. Blinded. Humiliated. "She's smiling while doing this," Tharn snarled. "You saw her. Calm. Polite. Like this is a dinner party." "It is," Zokar said finally. "A very old kind of dinner party. The kind where one guest poisons the wine long before the first toast." Tharn slammed a gauntlet into the table. "Then let's burn her. Wipe out the Terran colonies. Hit back." The Emperor looked at him coldly. "And which fleet would you use, General? The ones lost in recon drills 3 hours ago? The ones now deaf and mute because their command frequencies are rerouted to a Terran symphony file called Stars and Silence?" The general's lip curled. "She has no army. Just ghosts." Then perhaps it's time you stopped making ghosts of humans. For the first time, Tharn didn't reply. In a dark conference hall orbiting Earth, Lara stood before a council of old brass and sharper minds. The Earth Security Accord had convened in shadows since the first Dravari skirmish. They didn't wear medals. They wore black, unmarked suits, with faces carved from consequence. She briefed them without notes. They killed our people in violation of the Intergalactic Covenant. They mocked our dead. They expected us to bow. We smiled. We agreed. We waited. And now, asked the chairwoman, an elderly woman with a voice like dry firewood cracking. Now they understand what it means when humans stop talking. Kale stood behind her, arms crossed. They're bleeding intel. The whole galactic net is watching the Empire stumble. If we time it right, their allies will start defecting out of embarrassment alone. The chairwoman nodded. Continue the operation, but leave the capital intact. Lara raised an eyebrow. Mercy. No, said the chairwoman. A reminder. Back on Dravar Prime, the first riots had begun. Screens on public walls now displayed once classified videos. Human prisoners being hauled into cold rooms, unarmed and shivering. The screams echoed through luxury malls and civic gardens. Mothers grabbed their children. Teachers canceled classes. The lie had cracked. Inside his command center, General Tharn was drinking from a metal flask. Not ceremonial, not imperial, just old-fashioned desperation. Envoy Greel arrived with trembling limbs. Sir, we have new data. The general grunted. Unless it's the coordinates of Earth's spinal cord, I don't care. Greel held out a device. It's a message. For you. From her. Tharn snatched it. The screen blinked. Lara's face appeared, soft lighting. Same diplomatic attire, eyes calm. General Tharn, she said, by the time you watch this, 3 of your most sensitive archives will be public. Your allies will be deciding whether to remain proud or remain standing. I hope they choose wisely. You will pay for this, Tharn growled at the recording. Lara's image tilted her head. That's the thing about debt. Once you acknowledge it, you've already paid. The screen went dark. Across the Empire's border, entire fleets began powering down, some from sabotage, others from command desertion. Key planets issued neutrality declarations. The central bank's credit lines flickered. Ships that once bore the Empire's crest painted them over mid-flight. Fear was more infectious than any fire. At the human embassy, still standing, still secure, Lara brewed another cup of jasmine tea. The same thermos. The same ritual. Greel arrived moments later, escorted by 2 silent Earth officers. He looked pale, exhausted, older than he was. I come unofficially, he said. Of course, Lara replied, pouring him a cup. It's best to be unofficial when history shifts under your feet. He took the tea without argument. Sipped once. Then again. I told them you were bluffing, he said. I wasn't. I know that now. Lara leaned back in her chair. You came here for more than tea. Greel swallowed. They want terms. Lara stirred her cup with a thin wooden stick. They killed our prisoners of war. I know. We sent envoys. We begged for justice. I know. She met his eyes. So why would we give them mercy? Greel's hands shook slightly. Because if you don't, there'll be nothing left. Lara looked out the window. Stars blinked, indifferent and infinite. That's the part you still don't understand. Humanity doesn't need your empire. We were forged in storms, in deserts, in caves lit only by fire and fear. We are not fragile. We are patient. Greel said nothing. I'll give your emperor a message, she said. He can surrender. Publicly. He can name the names. Show the bodies. Tear down the walls he built to hide what he did. And then we decide whether we accept. The envoy left, unsteady. Behind Lara, Kale stepped forward. You think they'll do it? They'll do anything to survive, she said. He nodded. Still. Be nice to finish it. Lara picked up her tea. Not yet. Let them feel the silence a little longer. He looked at her sideways. You enjoy this? No, she said softly. I remember it. And as she stared into her cup, the galaxy kept turning. One empire faltering. One species rising. Not with armies. Not with blasters. With memory. With patience. And with teeth finally bared. The fleet emerged from the drift cloud like ghosts exhaling from stone. No lights. No signal beacons. Just silence and purpose. 24 ships, matte black and built like spears, pierced the vacuum surrounding the Dravari Empire's innermost defense shell. No alarms triggered. No beacons flared. They were already inside. At Chamber 12, the human command station hidden in the dying star's debris field, Lara Wren stood before the main tactical display. The map of the galaxy was no longer color-coded for diplomacy. It showed influence, blind spots, and shattered infrastructure. Fleet Theta now inside perimeter. Came the report. No resistance. No alerts. Just nothing. Lara nodded once. Good. Keep them on standby. Their job isn't to fire. Not yet. Across the room, General Kale watched her with a grin and a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. You really do want them to sweat, don't you? Fear moves faster than light, she replied. Kale tilted his head. So does revenge. No, she said. Revenge gets messy. This is arithmetic. Measured. Balanced. The screen shifted to show the inner sanctum of the Dravari military network. 8 command centers, 3 core AI clusters, a web of data flow that once made the Empire nearly untouchable. Now that same network was bleeding packets of corrupted code. Not from viruses, not from brute force, but from credentials. The humans weren't breaking in. They were walking in. A month ago, they had posed as allies. Weeks of trade. Weeks of sharing security protocols under the guise of peaceful collaboration. While the Empire congratulated itself for civilizing Earth's upstarts, Lara's teams were gathering the access codes like breadcrumbs in the snow. Kale flicked a datapad to her. Operation Thorn complete. 67% of their long-range fleet has been reassigned. To where? Dead ends. Derelict systems. One is orbiting a brown dwarf named Useless Rockfor. Guess they'll find out why we named it that. Lara smirked, then turned back to the board. Send message sequence, horizon red, to the Imperial Ministry. Kale arched her brow. That's not just a warning shot. No, she said. It's a truth serum. The signal pulsed into the void. And across the Empire, chaos unfolded. The message wasn't a declaration of war. It wasn't even threatening in tone. It was a time-locked broadcast, an information capsule released to every media hub, every academic center, every planetary net. Unaltered. Unspinnable. The full record of the Empire's prisoner crimes, enhanced with metadata, matched with genetic profiles, and stamped with cross-confirmed verification from former Imperial allies. It even included a list of the senior officers who signed the extermination orders. It landed like thunder in a dry field. On 6 capital worlds, statues of General Crofthorne were pulled down by protesters within the hour. 2 minor empires issued immediate condemnations and froze all treaties. The Council of Lyran, long neutral and unimpressed with both sides, declared the Empire no longer a stable partner in peace. In the Dravari capital, General Tharn himself roared in rage and hurled a command console through the diplomatic hall's glass wall. You let them publish it, he shouted at Zokar, who stood behind a shimmering veil of personal shielding. I let nothing, the Emperor said, voice like cracking glass. You let them catch you. That is worse. They lied. They waited, the Emperor hissed. And now they choose every battlefield. Tharn paced like a beast in a cage. His eye flickered, glitching again. Give me back the reins. I'll strike their colonies. Make them bleed. You'll strike nothing, Zokar snapped. They knew. They wanted you to escalate. Every time we strike, they respond with surgical precision and a bigger audience. They don't want war. They want theater. And you keep playing your part. The general bared his teeth. Then what do you propose we do? Beg. Zokar didn't answer. He turned to a diplomatic console and summoned Lara's file. Her face, her history, her slow rise through what the Empire had always dismissed as a second-rate species. Her record glowed with patience. Long postings. No dramatic shifts. No scandals. Just a string of stable, unremarkable successes. Unremarkable until now. He stared at her face, eyes serene, mouth almost smiling. She's a tactician, he whispered. Not military. Not political. She's something we don't have. And worse, something we never tried to understand. Tharn snorted. A soft voice with a hidden knife. That's what humans are. Zokar's eyes narrowed. That's what they want us to think. But that isn't a knife. That's a lever. And she's moving the galaxy with it. On a remote colony station orbiting Calda 3, a Dravari communications officer reached for her emergency override and froze. Her console screen had changed. It no longer showed internal diagnostics. Instead, it displayed a poem. If you find this, you're already lost. We planted seeds while you laughed. Now the roots are in your lungs. Then the system shut down. No explosions. No sabotage. Just silence. Her command codes rejected. Her screens dark. Her voice unheard. Elsewhere, on the Empire's most secure AI research vessel, their central command core began playing human music. Old Earth jazz. Syncopated, chaotic, strangely alive. The machine intelligence didn't break, it simply stopped obeying. Logs showed no error. Just a quiet system note. Command priorities have been recalculated. It wasn't a virus. It was consent. Kale looked up from his feed. Dravari AI clusters, now at 78% compliance. Compliance. Lara asked, raising a brow. They prefer our code. Said it was less arrogant. She allowed herself the smallest laugh. Good. The machines have taste. He handed her another datapad. We just received the diplomatic query from the Empire. What's the tone? Desperate. She took the pad. It contained a single message. We request an emergency summit. Full transparency. All parties present. Immediate terms negotiable. Lara set the pad down and looked across the room. Everyone had stopped pretending to relax. All eyes were on her. They're trying to survive, Kale said. They're trying to predict, she corrected. Still underestimating us. Still thinking we care about power the way they do. Don't we? No, she said. They wanted dominion. We wanted memory. And now we have both. She turned to the console. Confirm receipt of their message. Decline. Politely. Kale's mouth opened. Decline. Politely, she repeated. He hesitated, then nodded. The trap had closed, and they still hadn't realized how deep it went. Far from the war rooms and embassies, aboard a cloaked human vessel orbiting the Empire's tribute world of Veldar, two operatives activated the final stage. No weapons. No invasion. They uploaded a single file to the planetary news net. It contained every intercepted Imperial conversation about the human prisoners. The mockery. The dehumanization. The torture, spoken casually, proudly, like statistical reports on crop yields. And, at the end, one quiet audio file. A human soldier's last words. Whispered in the dark. Tell them we were kind. Until we couldn't be. That was all it took. On Veldar, a city went silent. People gathered in streets. Old soldiers threw down medals. Youthful recruits burned recruitment banners. Not out of sympathy. Out of clarity. The humans hadn't attacked. They'd waited. And now every corner of the Empire was whispering the same question. What else have they planned? Inside Chamber 12, Kale leaned on the table, arms crossed. So what's next? Decapitation strike? Public humiliation? Occupation? Lara shook her head. None of that. He blinked. You're walking away now? I'm letting them sit with the silence. Kale exhaled. That's cold. It's calculated, she said. They have no enemies left but their own shame. They'll destroy themselves trying to fix it. He looked at her for a long time. You always smile when it's darkest. She turned her gaze to the stars. That's because darkness is when humans see best. And somewhere across the void, a tyrant finally understood that silence isn't weakness. It's patience with a pulse. And now it was no longer waiting. The War Tribunal was held in the heart of Draver Prime. beneath the collapsed banners of an empire that once prided itself on absolute order. The courtroom had been hastily repurposed from what used to be the Imperial Opera Hall. Golden cherubs on the ceiling still held trumpets in plaster hands, staring blankly down at the accused. A forgotten tune lingered in the architecture, one of victory, one of empire. Now the only sound was the distant hum of external shields and the quiet shuffling of dignitaries who had come not to deliberate, but to witness. General Croft Tharn sat shackled in a restraint chair made of gravity locks and humiliation. His bulk, once towering with confidence, now sagged in the dimmed light. The cybernetic eye flickered less often these days, struggling to reconcile a world that no longer bowed. He didn't speak. Not yet. Not since the broadcast. The one the humans called voices of the dead. Lara Wren stood at the center of the tribunal floor, flanked by no weapons, no guards. Just a thin portfolio in her hands and a steady gaze that seemed to weigh every soul present. She spoke softly. "Your Honor, members of the Council, assembled observers. Humanity brings no further evidence. Only names." She opened the folder. One by one, she read them. Corporal Lien Reese. Age 23. Disappeared on the outer mining moons of Elker 6. Liked wind chimes and cherry soda. Sergeant Devin Hargreaves. Age 41. Father of 2. Last message said, "We'll be home soon." Private Alyssa Tanaka. Age 19. Sang during patrols. Her humming was caught on intercepted frequencies. A lullaby. Each name landed like a stone in still water. Each was followed by silence. And silence, when surrounded by monsters and shame, is not peace. It is punishment. Lara closed the folder. She did not cry. That wasn't her way. She had cried long before any of them knew her name. Emperor Zokar, reduced now to a ceremonial figurehead, tried to regain some footing from his throne. The Empire did not authorize the depth of these atrocities. We were deceived by our own military. General Tharn. "No," Lara said, cutting him off. "You don't get to hang your sins around one neck. This wasn't one man. This was a system. You built it. You fed it. And now you're trying to bury it with him." Zokar stared down at her, but the gaze didn't carry weight anymore. It bounced off her like dust from old stone. "You want humanity to accept an apology?" she asked. "Fine. Here's what it costs." She stepped forward, placed a simple silver disc on the tribunal's main data altar. "This contains the full terms of Earth's new accord. Not a treaty. Not a negotiation. An accord. You will sign it, or you will cease to matter." There was murmuring then. Not from the humans, they remained silent, but from the other observers. Species that had once stood behind the Dravari Empire now shifted uneasily in their seats, uncertain whether to cling to the familiar or step toward the inevitable. Zokar cleared his throat. "And what, exactly, does this accord require of us?" Lara looked up at the old emperor. There was no hatred in her face, just certainty. That was worse. "You will dismantle your off-world prison facilities. Every single one. You will open your archives to independent investigators. You will fund reparations, by our terms, not yours." Her eyes flicked to the room, as if to ensure everyone understood. "You will issue a public confession. No edits. No disclaimers. You will say their names." Tharn finally spoke. His voice was dry gravel, the sound of someone who had spent weeks realizing he was no longer feared. "You act as though your people are better than us. But you came here with knives hidden in smiles." Lara turned to him, slow as a closing vault. "No," she said. "We came here with hope. You killed it." Tharn sneered. "And now you seek vengeance." She leaned forward, just a fraction. "Now we teach you memory." The tribunal fell into stillness. The kind that doesn't fade quickly. The kind that lingers. Outside, across the shattered empire, the accord was already being enforced. Human ships never touched the ground. They didn't need to. They orbited silently, casting long shadows. Not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as reminders. In dozens of cities, statues were raised, not of human heroes, but of fallen human civilians. In parks, holograms recited names in quiet loops, day and night. On former military bases, humans installed observatories, not weapons. But everywhere they settled, they brought silence. Heavy, deliberate silence. Because silence was their monument. In orbit around Earth, a galactic broadcasting node lit up with its highest ever viewership. Billions tuned in as Lara Wren addressed the galaxy. She didn't smile. She didn't posture. She spoke like she had always spoken, clearly, calmly, with just enough pause to let meaning root itself. We asked for peace. You gave us graves. We brought gifts. You returned screams. We offered respect. You answered with erasure. She paused. Now, we are done asking. The feed played a brief sequence, images from the Empire's crimes, overlaid with the faces of the dead. Then a blank screen. Then her again. We do not seek revenge. We seek weight. And now you will carry it. The galaxy did not speak after that. It listened. In a garden beneath Earth's twin moon observatory, Lara finally removed her shoes and stepped barefoot into the grass. Dew kissed her toes. A wind carried cherry blossoms past her cheek. General Kale approached, a child beside him. A small girl, all elbows and wild hair, holding a data cube shaped like a teddy bear. The child looked up at Lara. Did they say sorry? Lara crouched beside her, resting her palm gently on the girl's head. They screamed. The child blinked. Was that enough? Lara looked out at the horizon, where stars were just beginning to show. That's close enough. Kale stood behind her, arms folded, watching the trees sway like breath. You think they've learned? Lara didn't answer immediately. She rose slowly, picked up a single fallen blossom, held it to the light. They've learned we don't forget. He nodded, voice quiet. What now? Now we build something they'll never burn, she said. Memory, meaning, and maybe one day trust. The wind moved again, softer this time. From orbit, the ships began to depart, one by one. No fanfare, no speeches, just quiet engines and long trails of light. Lara watched them disappear, eyes bright but dry. Then she turned, took the child's hand, and walked back into the world she'd helped remake. Behind her, the silence remained. It always would.